It's Natalie Wheeland again. Today we've got another tip for our legal natters on how to really be a lawyer. And today is understanding case citators, because I think they're really not understood. And when I'm talking about a case citator, I'm talking about the products like First Point and Casebase. Because there's this real sense if it's not in Casebase, it doesn't exist, and that may or may not be the case. So what are case citators? They're not a place you go and get the full text of the case. They're a place that provide us a summary of the case. But the most important element of it is it tells us what's happened since. So it gives us a sense in our common law system where we have a doctrine of precedent, we follow old cases. Is it still really good law? Has it been followed? Have the courts continued to follow that principle of law? So that is when we use a case citator. But the things I want you to be aware of, let's start with Casebase. When you go to Casebase, you go to LexisNexis.au, you choose Casebase, which I highly recommend. I think one of the problems these days is we tend to be using the front interface and searching across all these databases and not really sure where we are. So I always say it's best to use it like a library to go and take a product off the shelf. So we click on search next to Casebase. And then over on the left-hand side, there's something that says scope. Have a look at that, and particularly the unreported judgment scope, and you'll be surprised. It doesn't tend to cover much prior to the 90s. Sometimes it only started in the 2000s. So it's a limitation to be aware of, and it might mean you haven't done as comprehensive search as you think. The other thing is when we put the name of a case in, it doesn't give us every case that's ever discussed it. It gives us a list of cases that have looked at our case according to the editor. Now that's the crucial thing. There's been an editorial process and the editor has decided we think these are the cases that need to be listed as subsequently referring to our primary case. First Point does the same. So an editor goes through and it has a look at how it's subsequently been treated. And I tend to find their results are slightly varying. So, and as you'd expect, if I got 10 lawyers to summarise a case and tell me what are the key points, they come up with different things. So it's an important distinction to be aware of. And I think if you know that, you can take that on board. Whereas the other two databases, the newest databases in the market is LawSite, which you can find by going to Ostley and click on LawSite. And it just, you put your case in and it just does a computer generated, these are all the cases that have subsequently mentioned it. But where it really comes into its own is it doesn't restrict itself to Australia, it looks across the world. And then there's a new player on the market that's even pushing the boundaries further, and that's called Jade Barnett. And it's been published by the New South Wales Bar Association. And it not only tells us cases have subsequently discussed it, but one of our issues is we might be looking at a case and it might have 7 points of law and we're only interested in one part of that and we want to know if it's been discussed. Well, in Jade, you find your principal case, you click in the paragraph and it goes off and says, look, these are cases that have discussed that paragraph. So this is a new player in the market and something that's really exciting and interesting to watch. The other thing Casebase does is when we put a case name in, it tells us number of places it's been reported, but the first one on the list is the official citation, so that's its use. But one place that Casebase doesn't help us is when we just know the facts of the case. Now, what happens as human beings is we tend to remember the story behind a case, not necessarily the name of it or the citation. So I'll give you an example. There's a big criminal law case called He Corte and the Queen, and it deals with mens rea in relation to prohibited drugs and importation. That's not what we usually remember. What we remember is that someone was caught coming from Kuala Lumpur into Tullamarine Airport in Melbourne with 10 kilograms of heroin and they got caught. So if you type in all of that, 10 kilograms, heroin, Kuala Lumpur, the stuff that we remember as human beings into Casebase or First Point, you don't get the case because it never summarises the facts, it just summarises the law. So when you've got the facts, the place you can go to is both Lexis and Westlaw publish something called unreported judgments, which is just a melting pot of everything, or otherwise you can always use Ostley. So I think what I'd like you to come from this is there's a variety of databases to look at, but in relation to the case citators, there's 4 on the market. There's Casebase, First Point, LawSite, and Jade Barnett.